Etsy vacation mode is one of the most misunderstood tools on the entire platform. Some sellers are terrified to use it. They think it completely destroys your shop. And the truth is, most of what you hear about vacation mode just isn't true. I've used vacation mode in different ways over the years, sometimes well, sometimes not. So I wanted to share what I've learned and what actually matters before you make that decision yourself. So let's start with what you think about before you even turn vacation mode on, because that part makes everything easier. Before you turn on Etsy vacation mode, there are a few things that I really want you to think about first, because this is where most of the stress around vacation mode actually comes from. The first thing to look at is your current orders. If you can reasonably finish what's already been sold, it's usually best to do it before you switch it on. Vacation mode doesn't cancel your orders, and it doesn't pause your buyer expectations. So the quieter your order list is, the more your break actually feels like a break. You could even consider starting your vacation mode a few days early so you stop orders and clear your backlog before you actually go away or take your break. The next thing to check is your processing times. If you're only going to be away for a few days, extending your processing times can sometimes be a simpler option, especially if it's not a really busy time for you when you're taking this break. Most often, this is the option I use when I'm going away for a short time in the summer, because that's a quieter time for my shop, so I'm less likely to have many messages to deal with. Vacation mode really shines when you need a proper pause, when you don't want new orders coming in, not at all. Later in the video, I'll talk more about alternatives to vacation mode and when each one makes sense, because this is the big decision point for a lot of sellers. It's also important to think about when you're using vacation mode, not just how long for. Turning it on during a quiet period feels very different to turning it on during peak season or when a listing is already performing really well. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means expectations matter, especially when you come back. I'll dive into this more in the video, but just the act of using vacation mode will not hurt your shop, but you could lose some of your momentum if your competitors are making sales and you're not. It's not a shop killer. Most shops recover very quickly, but it is something you need to be aware of. One of the biggest fears I hear is the idea there's some kind of secret time limit. Like if you're gone too long, Etsy punishes your shop. There isn't. Vacation mode doesn't suddenly flip a switch after a certain number of days. And in the next section, where we talk about whether vacation mode actually hurts your shop, I'll break down what we know versus what's just a myth. Before you turn it on, though, write your vacation message. Buyers really do read it, especially returning customers. A clear, friendly message that says when you'll be back helps people trust that you're coming back and gives them a reason to favorite your shop instead of forgetting about it. And don't forget your auto response message too, in case your customers message you. I've experimented with vacation mode and not in my shop. For me, where it's helped the most is Christmas, that holiday period. For years, I used to keep my shop open all through December. Every year, I'd tell myself I'd cope, and every year it was stressful. Late orders, postal delays, customers panicking about gifts, and me constantly checking messages instead of actually enjoying the time off. I used to get messages on Christmas Day with people demanding their parcels. Now I put my shop on vacation mode for pretty much the whole of December. Yes, there is always that moment of worry when you turn it on. The fear of losing sales never completely goes away. But the relief I feel is honestly bigger than that fear. What surprised me the most is the sales don't always disappear. Some customers come back in January, some come back the following year and order earlier, and some people actually appreciate knowing exactly when I'll be back. So before you turn on vacation mode, ask yourself one simple question. Do you need a pause from orders or do you need a pause from Etsy entirely? Because they are two very different things. Getting this part right makes everything easier, including how vacation mode feels when you're in it and how your shop feels when you come back. What buyers see. When sellers talk about vacation mode, a lot of their fear comes from imagining what it looks like to buyers. So let's talk about that. It's not what people usually think. When a buyer visits your shop while it's in vacation mode, they don't see an error page, they don't see anything broken. They see your shop, your branding, and a clear message that you're temporarily away. Your listings aren't available to purchase, but your shop still exists. Your banner photos are still there, your reviews are still there, and that matters more than a lot of sellers realize. Buyers can also still favorite your shop while you're in vacation mode. And this is important because favoriting is often how customers say, I'll come back to this later. So vacation mode doesn't mean buyers disappear. It just means they're postponing the purchase. Buyers can also message you. This can feel like a stressful surprise if you weren't expecting it, but it also gives you a chance to set boundaries. Etsy is still counting your replies to your star seller and your customer service stats, so you do have to reply. But the good news is you can set up that auto reply right when you set up your vacation mode, so customers get an instant reply. And then you can further reply when it's convenient to you. In your auto reply, you don't have to over explain. Just a short, polite reply that confirms when you'll be back is usually more than enough. If you're still working on orders, mention that you are going to be doing that. And that reassures customers that you've not done a moonlit flip with their money. Your vacation message matters so much. It's not just a technical notice, it's still part of your customer experience. And this ties back to something I mentioned earlier. A lot of sellers worry that going into vacation mode makes buyers forget about them. But in reality, clear communication actually often does the opposite. It gives people the confidence to wait, especially if they've bought from you before. And if you didn't get the chance to finish all your orders, it lets customers know that you're still working with them. Your shop hasn't been shut down. You've not scammed them. In the next section, where we talk about whether vacation mode hurts your shop or your search visibility, this buyer behavior becomes really important because Etsy doesn't just look at listings, it looks at how people interact with shops. So people coming back to your shop can really help the algorithm wake back up to your listings. The key thing to remember here is this: vacation mode pauses purchases, not your existence. Buyers can still see you, remember you, and come back, especially if you make it easy for them to do just that. Search SEO and algorithm myths. This is usually the point where sellers really start to panic because this is where rumors live. When people talk about your Etsy vacation mode hurting your shop, they're usually talking about search. So let's slow this down and talk about what actually happens and what's mostly myth. While your shop is in vacation mode, your listings don't appear in Etsy search. That part is true. Buyers can't find and purchase them because you're away, because Etsy doesn't want buyers clicking on things they can't buy. But that's very different from your listings being deleted, wiped, or permanently damaged. They're hidden, not erased. One of the biggest myths is that Etsy de-indexes your listings or that vacation mode resets everything back to zero. There is no evidence of this happening. Your listings don't lose their history, and there isn't some kind of permanent mark put against your shop. There's also something really interesting that happened fairly recently that's worth bearing in mind. Towards the end of last year, there was a major Etsy bug where a lot of sellers noticed that their listings had effectively disappeared from search. Even when buyers searched for very specific, niche, long-tail keywords, their listings just weren't showing where they should have been. Sellers talked about it extensively in the forums, and Etsy actually confirmed that it was a bug. What happened next was unexpected. They found a workaround. They realized that if a shop put itself into vacation mode and then took it back out again, those listings would temporarily, for about a day, reappear in search, often exactly where they expected them to be. Their visibility was restored for 24 hours. Now, I want to be clear about what this does and doesn't mean. I don't think this means vacation mode some kind of strategy for boosting search visibility in normal circumstances. But what it absolutely does show is that simply putting your shop into vacation mode doesn't damage your listings, de-index them permanently, or remove them from Etsy's system. If anything, that unplanned test strongly suggested the exact opposite, and that nothing bad happened from using vacation mode itself. And that's important context when people talk about fear, penalties, or long term damage. Another common fear is the idea of a time limit, that being away too long somehow triggers a penalty. And this is where I want to be really clear. There isn't a magic number of days where Etsy suddenly decides your shop's less trustworthy. What matters much more is what your shop looked like before vacation mode and how it behaves after you come back. This is also why different sellers have completely different experiences. A shop with consistent sales and strong listings and regular engagement often does come back more smoothly than a shop that was already struggling before going into vacation mode. And it can make it feel like vacation mode was the cause, when really it's just exposing those existing momentum issues. And something else that's important to understand is that each system responds to activity over time. When your shop is paused, that activity pauses too. And your competition is still making sales and getting reviews. And when you come back, it might take a little time for things to warm up again, and that is normal. It doesn't mean you've been punished. Later in the video, when we talk about how to recover momentum after vacation mode, I'll go through what actually helps with that and what tends to make things worse if done in a panic. But the key takeaway here is this: vacation mode pauses your visibility, not your potential. It doesn't erase your progress, and it doesn't automatically hurt your shop. Understanding that difference is what stops sellers from making fear-based decisions and help you use vacation mode as a tool instead of treating it like a last resort. Vacation mode versus the alternatives. Vacation mode isn't the only way to pause your Etsy shop, and this is where a lot of sellers get stuck because they're trying to pick the least risky option instead of the right one. So let's talk through the main alternatives and when each one actually makes sense. One option is extending your processing times. This works well if you're still able to make and ship orders, just more slowly. Maybe you're traveling, maybe life is busy, maybe you just need more breathing room, or maybe you think there's a viral moment on the horizon. The upside is that your listings stay live and orders keep coming in. The downside is that you're still mentally on. Many customers don't read processing time, so you may get angry people demanding their items, and also it may still end up in slowing down orders for the people who do read processing times. This could actually still end up with your listings dropping in search if customers are going to your competition. Remember, you still need to manage messages, expectations, and deadlines. Vacation mode is different. It's a full pause on new orders. If you need proper time away, not just from making, but from Etsy, vacation mode is usually the cleaner option. Customers can still message, but your autoresponder can let them know not to expect responses until you return. Another approach some sellers try is marking listings as sold out or setting the quantities to zero. This can work if you only need to pause a few specific items, but it gets messy quickly. It's easy to forget what you've turned off, and it doesn't really reduce the mental load. It also, of course, stops sales to those listings, which will have the impact of dropping them in the ranking when you turn them back on. If you're still making sales and getting reviews, your overall shop quality score will still be going up, so the dip in ranking may be less than stopping all sales. But if a listing is sold out for many, many months, you might find it's lost most of its momentum. But if you don't have the supplies to make the item for that period of time, you can't help that. There's also an option that people don't talk about enough, and that's raising your prices. If your shop is extremely busy, that's often a signal. It's not a problem. Raising your prices doesn't guarantee that sales will slow down, but it can change how they come in. When I raised my prices, my revenue actually continued to increase slightly, but the number of orders dropped. That meant more money for less work, which is a big win. Now, this option isn't risk free. Sales might not slow down at all, or they might slow down too much. Some customers may be disappointed if they just missed your previous price. So it's something to approach thoughtfully, not impulsively. But a busy period can be a really good moment to step back and ask yourself whether your pricing still reflects your time, skill, and capacity. And this is where intention matters most. If you're trying to avoid a short term bottleneck, a lighter adjustment might be enough. If you're trying to protect your energy, your health, or your enjoyment of your business, a bigger reset like vacation mode or pricing change can be the smarter long term move. Next, when we talk about coming back from vacation mode and rebuilding momentum, you'll see why choosing the right kind of pause makes everything easier. The biggest mistake I see sellers make is choosing an option that keeps them half working when what they really needed was a reset. So instead of asking which option is safest, ask which option actually supports the way I want to run this business. The answer is allowed to change according on which version of you is asking. Some days we're burnt out and need the time to recharge. Some days we have all the energy in the world, but there are just not enough hours in the day. Coming back from vacation mode. Coming back from vacation mode is the part many sellers worry about, and it's also where the panic creeps in. So instead of guessing, let's talk about a few simple things you can do that actually help. The first one starts before you even come back. In your vacation mode message and your auto reply to customers message, clearly state when you're reopening. The date matters. It reassures buyers that you are coming back and gives returning customers a reason to check in again rather than just forgetting all about your shop. When you do turn vacation mode off, don't expect everything to bounce back instantly. A quieter first few days is completely normal. Think in weeks, not in hours. One really useful approach is to create a small sense of we're back without turning it into a big relaunch. This could be a short series of posts on social media, or even just a couple, saying you're reopening, showing something you're working on, or reminding people what you sell. Behind the scenes, this can also be a good moment to gently check on your shop. Do some light keyword research, look at how similar listings are being positioned now, and make sure your titles and tags still make sense. This isn't about rewriting everything, it's just making sure you're not working with outdated information. If your shop is seasonal, reopening can also be a really natural time to plan a small launch. This might be a new variation, a refreshed product, or even just highlighting something that's particularly relevant for right now. Teasing that before or just after reopening gives buyers a reason to pay attention again. Another option, and this completely depends on your business, is a short intentional promotion. This could be a sale on out of season items or a small limited time offer shared just with your social media followers or mailing list. It's not about discounting everything. It's about giving people a nudge, not creating pressure. What matters most here is that everything you do is planned, not reactive. You're guiding your shop back into activity, not trying to shock it into life. Vacation mode doesn't erase your progress, it pauses it. And if you panic and change all your titles and tags, that could do more harm with the algorithm as you remove those superstar keywords that were proven winners. They just needed a few weeks to start being found by the buyers again. And with clear communication, gentle signals of activity, and realistic expectation, your shop usually finds its rhythm again without all that stress. Vacation mode, burnout, and running a sustainable Etsy shop. I want to finish by zooming out a little because vacation mode isn't really about settings or algorithms. It's about sustainability. A lot of Etsy sellers feel like they're not allowed to stop. Like if they take a break, everything they've built will fall apart. And that belief is what leads to burnout far, far more often than anything vacation mode could do to their shop. The reality is, Etsy is a long game. Most successful shops aren't built by never resting. They're built by sellers who know when to step back and when to lean in. Taking a break doesn't mean you're not serious about your business. In many cases, it means the opposite. Vacation mode is a tool. It's there to help you protect your energy, your health, and your enjoyment of the work. And those things directly affect how well your shop runs in the long term. Yes, there can be a bit of uncertainty when you turn it on, and yes, there can be a short adjustment period when you come back, but neither of those things automatically outweigh the cost of pushing through when you're exhausted. We often assume that being closed is bad for business, that if people can't buy right now, they'll just disappear. But that's not always how buyers think. There's a bakery in Glasgow. I still remember years later, I walked past it one Saturday afternoon and it was closed. On the window it said, open 7 a.m. till we sell out. Seeing it closed didn't put me off. It did the opposite. It made me think they must be good if they've already sold out. And the next time I was nearby, I went earlier to make sure I didn't miss out. There's your social proof. Being unavailable sometimes signals demand, not failure. Now, I'm not saying you should constantly switch your shop on and off to create artificial scarcity, but I am saying that being open 24/7 is not the only way to build a successful business. When your shop has clear boundaries, whether that's limited hours, seasonable availability, or planned breaks, it can actually increase trust and perceived value. And this is especially true when you communicate clearly. People don't mind waiting when they understand why, and when they believe that what they're waiting for is worth it. So if you've ever worried that putting your shop in vacation mode makes you look unpopular or unreliable, it's worth flipping that thought around. Sometimes being sold out or temporarily unavailable is just proof that what you make is in demand. Something I've noticed over the years that sellers who plan their breaks tend to come back clearer, more focused, and more confident. And that shows in their listings, their pricings, and how they talk to their customers. So if you're watching this debating whether to use vacation mode, here's what I want you to take away. Vacation mode doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're choosing to run your shop in a way that you can actually sustain. And a sustainable business, that's one that still works for you next year and the year after that, is always stronger than one that never lets you rest.